live from New York. Year. All right, so we're just setting up here for RevFit Radio. Um, Renee,
Lost a lot of weight.
lost a lot of weight. Did something with his hair. You got a whole new look this week.
Cut it again.
So Renee is it's holiday season, so we got some weird scheduling over the next couple of weeks. So Renee is not in the house this week, or maybe he is. I don't know. But producer Arsenio is in the house and on camera. So that's good as well. Um, so yeah, so we're just setting up some tech here. If you're joining on IG, what's up? RevFit Radio. So yeah, we're just setting up a little bit. So just stay tuned. What's up? Da, 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 da. That's Sylvia. Thank you, fire. What up, Sylvia? All right, cool. So yeah, so if you tuned in last week, we I'll just do this quick announcement before we start. We didn't get our last week's episode up onto iTunes because the audio was pretty tough. Because it was our first live audience show, and we were trying to get the audio set up, and it's just this learning, these growing pains. So the audio was kind of tough, but we have the YouTube version up. So I was debating. I wanted to sit down with you, Arsenio. I wanted to sit down and see if we could clean up the audio a little bit and make it a little bit more enhanced, so that when people listen on the podcast, yeah, yeah, because we had interaction with the audience. We also had our other producer Iris, who was present, and she was a little away from the mic. So like when there was a portion that she did a segment, a Q&A segment, and you could barely hear her voice. So maybe there's some stuff we can do there. So that episode will come out on iTunes and stuff later on. Why are you saying sorry? It was our mics. I'm sorry that you weren't projected louder.
You don't gotta yell.
Yeah, you were speaking fine. It was our mics. Yeah, you from the Bronx, though. Yeah, you should. You should have a bigger outside voice. So I'm just kidding. All right, cool. So how we doing on everything? Links are good. We're up on IG. Nice. Got some people joining in via IG. So if you've never seen our show before, we are primarily on YouTube, and then we just have a IT or IG feed going on.
IT on IG.
IT on IG. So we got IG running. So if you're on IG, Instagram, we're over at RevFit Radio, and then if you're over on YouTube, our main feed, our main video feed, you just search in your YouTube feed Revolutionary Fitness Academy. And the reason that we don't have like a customized link on YouTube yet, right? It's not like youtube.com/RevFit, radio or RevFit education, is because we need more subscribers. So go ahead and subscribe.
Comment, subscribe, all the
Yes. How's your day, bro? Nice. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Growing it out. Show the special pills you got. You're about to put me on. So yeah, if y'all think this is like real heavy looking, y'all ain't even ready for this.
Once it gets on this stuff.
You got some like hair growing pills.
Beard growth. Liking revolution.
Does it have any good other side effects? I feel like beard growth brings other things.
If it's helping out my hair grow longer, why not?
Does it make all hair grow more?
Not sure. Apparently the hairs on your beard are from the hairs on your head.
But like chest hairs, ass crack hairs.
I turned into a werewolf, yes.
All right, nice. So yeah, so I'm gonna definitely start taking that because we're trying to get the handlebars. We're trying to get the handlebars going. I actually seen a dude who had like a nice full beard like you, but he brought out the handlebars on top of it. That's pretty cool.
But it's a high time to maintain the beard, not just grow it out and straight it out.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you can just grow it out.
Yeah,
And I did that like when I was like 19, and it was rough. My mom was like, "What are you doing?"
Like, oh my God, I like how it looks. Yeah, if he wants to take care of it, you good.
So he's been brushing his hair for like an hour since he got here.
It's therapeutic. What's exciting?
It's like a fidget spinner. So what you did this week?
Pretty good. I just came back from Texas. I was out there last week, so I couldn't be here for the live episode. I was out in Texas filming Fan Project. So I'm technically a Power Ranger. That's a little fun thing we're out doing there. Came back to work, back to the gym. I'm doing my butt into RevFit like always.
Oh wait, we got some feedback on our audio. Can you hear it on this? We're gonna check out that audio right now. We're gonna check out the audio and see what's going on.
Sure.
But yeah, let me see here. You know what I'm saying? I always sound crystal clear. It's because of the robotics in my DNA that y'all know about. I'm synchronized with the mic. But yeah. So Arsenio was in Texas and he was doing his power. It was you're doing a short film.
It's a short film web series. We were trying to film the pilot, but we didn't have enough footage because our footage got messed up. And then you're trying to get
What's going on with you, man?
trying to figure out.
Where's Arsenio?
I think the one picking it up.
Oh no, it's on Omni. It's an Omni thing.
Yeah.
The game. How we doing? How you feeling?
It's just a delay. That's the weird thing.
She says, now y'all both low. Damn. What's going on here? You messing us up, Yeti. What is going on?
We don't have the Urban Yeti here.
I know.
It works.
That's sounding better now?
Yeah.
All right. All right, Iris. You messing me up right now, Iris, because you on a delay. As every time I do an adjustment, you're like 10 seconds delayed.
And then I get 3 seconds later after
Oh
that.
my God. Iris, you need to just be here every Thursday in-house and stop playing games.
Okay, now it's not.
All right, cool. So you're doing a web series.
Yeah, it's a web series, an original concept by my friend Ivan. He designed this back when he was like in high school.
Nice.
So he those suits himself. He got the helmet 3D printed. We were making some stuff, painting it, and a lot of stuff we stuff on Saturday. We were there from like 6 a.m. to like 7 o'clock at night, and most of the footage wasn't good because there was too much wind. We didn't have a wind guard on our microphones, so as you can see, mics can always mess up a lot of production, and a lot of shots were like out of focus. Sun flares was in it. So,
And it was cold in Texas.
yeah, it was in the 40s.
You were like, oh, I'm going to Texas. I'm going to that warm weather.
I was like, I'm gonna show up there in shorts, and I'm like, oh no, I actually need like jeans. Everyone's there in sweaters, and I'm there in, like in a t-shirt rolled up, and I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Nothing for New York. Oh, man, Johnny's doing it.
What's up? So I only saw the original series of Power Rangers really because it was a little out of my generation. Like I was a little older when Power Rangers came out. I dug it, but I wasn't like fully in it. And you're a couple years behind me. You're not too much younger, but you were kind of that was like in your generation. So what's the musical annotation? What's the musical note? That's a certain series of Power Rangers?
No, it's a complete original concept because Power Rangers came from a show in Japan called Super Sentai. It was an adaptation. That's why when they transform, the footage turns into like old school 70s type footage, looks like lower quality. Lips don't always match up because it's all dubbed over. And my friend realized like there's never been a musical themed series.
What, Angie?
So he made up his own thing. So we're like, okay.
So it was a musical?
Yeah.
Y'all was singing?
We could be. We should have instruments. Like my character's the trumpet player.
Yeah. I saw you. You was getting some dirty dancing on with your trumpet. Word. Nice. So yeah, that looked like a lot of fun.
It was pretty fun.
Yeah. And so y'all gonna do some more filming out in Texas, or you're gonna?
Yeah, we're trying to do the GoFundMe and Indiegogo to fly out again in February to film out the pilot. With a new videographer because we don't want to waste another whole weekend.
Damn, shots fired at the videographer. Oh,
my bad.
Oh boy.
Always check your equipment.
What are you doing for the holidays, man?
Holidays? I'm actually taking a bus out to Atlantic City this weekend. First time going out there with my girlfriend.
Nice. Are you gonna gamble a little bit?
I plead the fifth.
A little bit of gambling. You gotta do the indoor pool though, right?
Oh, indoor pool, wiffle bar in the pool.
There we go.
So you know my fish sauce is in there.
There you go. So you get your little workout on, and you get your little tequila
And
on.
it's a gym.
There you go. There you go. And then what you doing for Christmas, New Year's, all that kind of stuff?
Christmas, probably had dinner with my mom and then Sammy's mom and her mom. And then for New Year's Day, probably take my mom out for Christmas, go see Aquaman. It's out in theaters, go see it, everybody. It's amazing. Seen it like
Yeah,
4 times already.
yeah, we saw that a week or two ago. Well, you saw it before me, but then I saw it again with you. It was amazing for sure. And then yeah, so so I won't be so next Thursday we're gonna try to have an episode. I'm not going to be physically here. I'm going to try to call in, but I will be in another time zone. I will be in Colombia. No, I'm gonna be in the same time zone. I'm gonna be in another part of the world. I'm gonna
There
be in
you go.
Colombia. So we're doing a family vacation to Colombia, to Cartagena. First time to Colombia, so I'm excited about that. So we're going from this 20, 30-degree weather to like the 80, 90-degree weather by the equator.
I ate you already.
So I'm hyped about that. So yeah, so if we have our episode, I'll try to call in.
He'll video call in a tank top, and we're gonna be all bundled up like, nah.
The only thing that's not it's not negative, but I'm starting my running season in January, and the trip to Colombia got pushed back a couple days because of ticket availability. Um, so I'm literally flying in on the 4th, and then I have a 10K run on the 5th. And so the 10K run is not the worst thing in the world, but I just want to be prepared. So I got to make sure that I'm running on the beach or
Beach
doing
running
whatever I
with
got to do.
weights.
Yeah, beach running with weights. We'll see
Get
how
some
that
ankle
goes.
weights, some arm weights, and be good.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see. We'll see if I get my runs in. Hopefully I get my runs in. But definitely we'll be working out on the beach and all that good stuff. What up, Rock? What up? Who else is on there? Angie. Nice. Cool, cool. So yeah, so this week on RevFit Radio, we were originally gonna get our good friend and board member of Revolutionary Fitness, Kiana McKee, on the show. It was her birthday this week, though, so she got a little tied up, so we couldn't get her on. Um, but the theme of this week was to talk about environmental racism, and so we're gonna keep going with that in the new year. Maybe we'll do a series of shows in January on the topic of environmental racism. It's something that we've been talking a lot. We had the understanding fitness justice workshop here at the People's Forum in Manhattan, 320 West 37th Street. Check out the People's Forum. So we had that workshop last week, which also was the live show, and we talked a lot about environmental racism. It's kind of been on our minds a lot, especially with the whole new Green Deal stuff that's going on um, in Congress with these progressive Democrats trying to push forward some climate justice legislation. So it's been a topic we've been discussing. So we're going to stay on topic this week. We're going to be talking about composting, and that seems kind of like, what does that have to do with environmental racism?
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So if you don't know what composting is, we're gonna break composting down, and hopefully we'll give you some ideas on how to maybe start composting yourself. Hopefully, but also just the benefits of composting, all that good stuff. So Arsenio, what do you know about composting? What do just hearing that word? What do you think it is?
Off the top of my head, compost pretty much the materials breaking down. So instead of just plastic, so that's just sitting on the environment, if it's a compost material, at the time it would degrade. So high school science thing will actually
There we go. There we go. So yeah. So basically, so all organic matter decomposes if it's allowed to. I mean, some organic matter, especially if it's in a landfill, that process of decomposition happens really slow or never, or just like a lot of waste. What's up, Angela? What's up, Josh? Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's probably Jenny going ham right now, inviting people. So yeah, so organic matter decomposes, right? So just think about all the waste that we create as a society. And I don't get the figures for the whole country, and definitely not for the whole world. But just here in New York City obviously is a massive city, home to like, what is it, like 9 million people or something like that. Probably more like 10 million, honestly, if you count the people who are not counted. So around like 9 million people living in the city. How much garbage you think is produced every day in the city? What would you guess?
definitely up in the well over the hundreds, almost in the thousands, eight.
Yeah.
That's
So
some neighborhoods too.
so for all of New York City, all five boroughs, is around 10,000 tons of garbage. 10,000 tons. So there's around for the New York City sanitation department. Um, so garbage folks. There's around, I think they have like a fleet of like 2,000 garbage trucks or something like that.
Yeah.
And so those 2,000 garbage trucks go out, and every day they collect around 10,000 tons, which is just a crazy number to even think about. Um, and where do you think most of that waste is coming from? What areas?
I mean, I'm gonna take a theory and say underprivileged neighborhoods because we don't have too much access to recycling and stuff like that, or it's just it's out there in the city because there's not enough maintenance for it. It's like, oh no, let's just leave it out there and not really do anything about it.
Right. So I think so visibly, if you think about garbage and waste in underserved communities, you see it more because there's not as much routine pickups. The waste disposal is kind of there's less staffing. Like think about NYCHA, public housing in New York City.
Yeah.
There's less staff to deal with the garbage. So there's all these issues when it comes to waste in the hood. But actually, the biggest producers of waste are going to be the more affluent neighborhoods. They're the ones that are consuming more things and generating a lot of waste because of that consumption. So out of all that waste, about a third of it is organic matter and primarily food waste, right? So most of the organic matter that that's being wasted is food waste. In addition, there's like paper, cardboard, all that kind of stuff, but primarily food waste. So out of the 10,000 tons is around a third of that coming organically, and then the rest is the plastic and the metals and all that kind of stuff. Um, and so there's a big issue with waste disposal in New York City. I mean, all across the country, really, all across the world. And you see all these documentaries about like plastic waste in the water. And you saw Jason Momoa from Aquaman. You saw
Yeah.
what he said about that?
Yeah.
He was calling it out. He was calling it out.
It's true, especially like as an islander myself, like in Cuba. I grew up on the beach, so I see firsthand how that affects too. It affects marine life, affects everything, and then just being in New York City and seeing that drastic change, you become aware of it even more. It's like, oh, okay, there's like beer containers floating around here, and that stuff does not degrade; it stays there forever. So our oceans are literally fucked beyond repair at this point.
Mm-hmm. There's actually a scene in Aquaman, not to go off on the tangent on Aquaman. We could do that though if you want.
Okay.
That literally all the what are they? They're not mer people. Atlanteans,
Yeah.
sea creatures, whatever. They literally toss all the waste that's been dumped in the sea onto the land. It's this crazy scene. That's pretty cool that they did that in Aquaman. But Jason Momoa came out in an interview, kind of like calling out plastic waste, and then also calling out U.S. colonialism of Hawaii, which was really really dope. I retweeted something that he said about that, and my mom was like, "Don't do it. It's gonna be bad for his career. It's too political."
That's the one thing I will say. He is very knowledgeable and stuff, and he does not shy away from talking about that stuff.
Yeah,
When we have stuff
yeah,
going on in his plant, he was talking about that all the time.
that's right. I mean, you don't see like nothing against like The Rock and these other kind of stars, but you got to utilize your platform for some good.
Exactly. If you have the chance to make a difference, you should. Great power, great responsibility.
Right. So in any case, so we have massive amounts of waste. New York City historically has been bad about waste. So there's this cool link. What's the name of that New York Times video? There's a video that the New York Times put together a while back, kind of talking about the sanitation and waste troubles of New York City. So we'll share that on the feed, and we'll get that on Twitter. But basically, they talk about how like tossing waste into the oceans was basically illegal. I think like in the 1880s. By the 1880s, it was illegal to throw garbage into the water. But New York City, because they had no other no other way to get rid of it, they were tossing it in the water all the way until the 30s. And it was the Supreme Court that had to come in and basically create special laws for New York City to ban disposal of waste into the water. So everything was going into the water for a while, all around New York City. So then after that was passed, they started exporting. There was some where they started creating landfills in New York City, primarily Staten Island, and I think northern parts of the Bronx and stuff like that. and the landfills just started filling up very quickly. So New York City, being such a highly populated place, started exporting its waste. So right now, I think the figure is something like 85% of that 10,000 tons a day, 85% of it gets exported and it's going into Jersey, it's going into Pennsylvania, it's going into Virginia. These less populated states have become these dumping sites for these landfills, and of course, it's the working class communities of those states that are getting all the bad byproducts of all that landfill waste. And then also too, in terms of the garbage handling, we talk about how in the South Bronx, the poorest county, the poorest congressional district in the U.S., in the South Bronx, around a third of garbage waste is handled in the South Bronx. So after it's disposed of in Manhattan, especially, there's no garbage handling in Manhattan. It's all put into Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. And hopefully on Twitter, Iris can share some resources. Oh, you got it there too.
Yeah, and post it on the YouTube page.
Yeah. So check out those resources so you can see where the waste is going. So, but the one thing I would we can start tackling is the organic waste. So that 3,500 tons of waste in New York City, for example, that's something that we can start tackling. Obviously, the recycling, recycling is a big part of the waste. So making sure that you're recycling, making sure that your building is following recycling regulations, because there's been a lot of laws passed in different states to ensure that recycling is happening.
Yeah.
But a lot of the landlords they'll do workarounds. And then, for instance, like the New York City sanitation department, well, is pretty good about recycling. They've created like special times and designated portions of their fleet to do recycling pickup. But there's a lot of those private garbage companies. You've seen those non
Yeah.
New York City sanitation. Those are private companies that primarily service commercial spaces. So like RevFit, we don't get our garbage picked up by the sanitation department. The city doesn't pick up for commercial businesses unless you're like a rich commercial business, then the city will pick your garbage up. But most small businesses, commercial businesses outside of Manhattan, they have to commission these private companies. These private companies are not following the recycling regulations. So you have to ensure that that's happening. Talk to your local legislation. Make sure that people are following regulations on that. Also, too, make sure that your superintendent, your landlord, all those folks are following the recycling regulations. So that's a big win if we can get more of that recycling happening. Of course, that gets rid of plastic waste. The metal waste is not as bad as the plastic waste, but it's just as harmful for sure. Getting all that stuff recycled and reused is going to be essential to minimize the impact. But the organic waste is what we're talking about today. So what do we do? What do we do with our food scraps? You know what I'm saying? Do we put them into landfills where they just are piling up the landfills and they're not useful, or do we do other things with it? And so this idea of composting, right? We talked about how all organic matter will decompose, and composting is basically just when a human starts engaging in that process of decomposition. So we do certain techniques and tricks, and we manipulate the matter that we're working with, and that's what composting is. So composting is just the human engagement in the process of decomposition. Um, so yeah, so there's different ways to do composting. There's different ways to deal with that organic matter. But before we get into some techniques, I think it's important we talk about, what the city has done in New York City, and maybe this is something that's happening where you live as well. You should investigate. But I'm going to speak specifically about New York City because I know firsthand. The city has created this zero. I think they're calling it the zero waste plan.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Look up. Zero waste plan, and One New York City. This is it. Zero waste plan. And so the goal for New York City is to eliminate waste, specifically the recycled material and the organic matter. Get rid of that waste, that issue of waste by 2030. Other cities like San Francisco, for example, who's kind of at the forefront of California as a whole, but San Francisco specifically is kind of at the forefront of this zero waste initiative. They're actually trying to end their zero waste, I think, by 2020. Yeah, ours is 2030. So check out what it is in your state and see what kind of stuff is happening around that. Because basically, there's been some passage of legislation into law. There's been some funding opening up to deal with waste. So we're going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about like techniques of composting, because there's actually some money behind getting a composting process going in your community. Um, but in any case, so they started the zero waste. There's also the New York City compost project, which is tied to the sanitation department or endorsed or funded. I'm not sure what their relationship is, but check out New York City Compost Project. And if you go to New York City Compost Project, they're gonna have resources on drop-off sites. There's also Iris was mentioning that one earlier. What's the other one that you put in the Slack chat? Iris, what was the other one? The other resource? You gotta check that Slack chat. Get up in your Slack. Grow NYC. That's right. So Grow NYC has a resource page to see compost drop-off sites. So basically, what these drop-off sites um, are organized initiatives for people in a community to drop off their waste, their organic waste, at these drop-off sites. And so that way, you don't have to think too much about the composting process. You drop them off at these sites. They're then collected and they're taken to different composting areas. Some of them are based in, I think Randall's Island is one of them that houses one. I think they have one in Brooklyn. The Botanical Gardens might be doing one, or maybe they just do trainings. And then there's actual like large farms that have developed relationships with the New York City legislators to get to become like these composting sites. Now that's kind of weird though, because like there's these farms that they're getting all this free compost,
Yeah.
and then they're making money off of it. So that's a little tricky, but it's better than
It's better than nothing,
yeah, it's better than it going into a landfill.
but it could be a very tricky situation. Like, what are they getting from all that?
Yeah, and which farms get picked to be able to be part of that composting project? That's something to look into. But in any case, so these drop-off sites are cool. You just find a drop-off site near you, and believe it or not, they're in all five boroughs. There's drop-off sites. And also too, if there's not a drop-off site in your zip code, you can contact the compost project and say, hey, I'm interested in helping organize a drop-off site, and they will actually supply you with like the composting collection bins. They'll supply you with literature and pamphlets and stickers for composting education. So there's actually some backing for that. So for instance, Iris, one of our producers, we had this conversation like, oh, you should compost, and she was like, oh, I don't know where to do that. And so I looked in the Bronx to see if I saw any composting drop-off sites, and there is compost drop-off sites, but I'm not sure in her zip code. So if she was interested and she had the time, she could work with the compost project and once a week become a compost pickup site. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. There we go. Get those links out. Get those resources out.
Oh, the YouTube is blowing up with all the links right now.
There we go. And if you have any questions about this stuff, feel free to ask them. You can ask them on our YouTube channel
Or IG Live.
or on IG. So basically, we're talking composting today. All right. So think about it. If you think about the waste that you're generating as a family, as a single unit, at least a third of your waste is gonna be food waste. Especially if you're someone who's cooking a lot at home and stuff like that, you're probably gonna have more food waste. Um, you know who has a lot of food waste, bro? Schools.
I've seen that firsthand, and I can definitely agree on that.
What is the deal?
Public education system. They give you preheated foods that you microwave, and the kids don't want to eat them. It's like, oh, we can't use this, and just toss them all out.
And I think what happens is that the schools have like health regulations that they can't save the food once it's been served.
Yeah.
So if kids don't want to eat the food that's been served because it's like trash food, right? There's been documentaries on like it's worse than like prison food. And
Oh,
stuff like
yeah. Speaking from first-hand experience, still remembering high school food, yeah, that's the reason I would go hungry in school.
So in any case, so you get all this food waste in schools, and I don't know if the city has an initiative. This would be something to look into, Iris and Arsenio. If the city has a deal or initiative with the public education system to get composting set up because all that food waste is just really really sad. So in any case, so if you think about the food, the waste that you're generating, and you're trying to bring that down, recycling your plastic and metals, and then your organic matter, taking it to one of these drop off sites. So you take it. So the way it works is that you collect your organic matter throughout the week. The way we do it in our home is that we have an actual. It's like a metal tin, like a composting um, collector. I don't know what the exact term is for it, but it's a metal tin, and it actually has this black kind of sponge-like material in the top. I think it's what's the black stone that's really good for you, that's good for your skin and stuff. You know what I'm talking about?
um, yeah.
Yes, it's on the tip of my tongue too. So in any case, one of those healthy stones, the sponge is made out of that, and so it kind of gets rid of scents. It minimizes, little fleas, fruit flies and stuff like that. So basically, whatever waste you have, peels, leftovers, charcoal. There it goes. There it goes. Charcoal.
Charcoal on that.
Charcoal. So it's like a charcoal sponge that filters out the scent.
Shout out
And
to
they're
Iris.
cheap. Shout out to Iris. So they're cheap. You could buy them for like 15, 20 bucks on Amazon. We're not gonna share that link though because we're not getting paid by Amazon. Fuck Amazon. But you can go and find it on there, and you collect your stuff throughout the week. So you can technically with like the New York sanitation, those brown composting bins.
Yeah.
You can technically put meat products and fish, but as composters, we always recommend against that because the animal products, those rot really quickly,
Yeah.
and that rotting is gonna smell. It's gonna create more pests. New York City has, like many cities, has a real big rat problem.
And the carbon dioxide emits from all that too.
Exactly, and also too, there's a lot of harmful stuff in the meat that you don't want that in your compost, your soil
Yeah.
at the end of the day. So if you're plant based, there's even more reason to be plant based. But definitely like all your fruits, vegetables. If you're eating eggs, the eggshells are really good because they're a source of calcium, which is really good for the growth of flowers and stuff like that. So all of that, those kind of food scraps are going to be really good to collect. And so basically, you take this bin and you can put it. They actually have like compost bags, which are plastic, but they're like so thin and made from like recycled plastic that they decompose. Regular plastic does not decompose, so that's important to think about too with your compost collection. Take off all the stickers off the fruit. Take off all the little wires that hold the fruit together. Rubber bands. That stuff is not going to decompose, and also it can become a hindrance to the composting process. So yeah, so you take it to this drop-off site, and then at the drop-off site they collect it, and then from there they facilitate the process to get it to these composting spaces. So that is probably the easiest route. You know what I mean? You're just collecting and taking it to a site. You don't have to think about the process. But then you can also, if you're interested, you can do your own composting process. So there's a bunch of different techniques on how to do this. Have you ever heard any of these? You ever seen anyone who's done any composting?
Ah, not really.
So you might have seen someone do it and not realize what they were doing. And if they have a house, if they had like a backyard, they might have been doing something. You might have not known what they were doing, or they did it a lot in schools. They would create what we call worm bins. Um, and so in schools, they created the worm bins. They didn't really actively throw peels and things into that. But these were, this was kind of like a small level composting setup. So yeah, so there's three main composting techniques I want to talk about today. So they're not asking questions online, so you can ask them questions to us for the masses. So the three that I want to go over. So the first one is the worm bin. So this is really good for folks who live in like a city, like a urban city where they don't have a house, they don't have a backyard, and a worm bin is a fairly easy setup, and it's kind of cool because if you're into having pets, it's kind of like having pets. You got some
Yeah.
worms. Some people are a little freaked out by worms, but that's just silly. You need to get over it. Worms are really, really cool creatures.
You need them for the environment too.
Yeah. So the worms are cool. So basically, the worm bin, what you're doing is you're putting in your composting in mixture, which we're going to talk about what that looks like. You put your composting mixture into this bin, and you can have there's like really cool setups that have like tiers and filtration systems and all this kind of stuff. So you could really just make it out of like a plastic bin and just put a little layer at the bottom for the drainage and stuff like that. I won't get too much into all that, but it's a fairly easy setup. But what you do is you take your composting ingredients, and then you take your worms and you put them in there. Now, for every pound of worms that live in your composting setup, you're going to be able to compost half a pound of food scraps, which is usually pretty good if you're like one or two people living in a household. You're probably going to have around half a pound of food scraps if you're not having too many leftovers and stuff that you're throwing out. Um,
Apparently, worms can eat approximately 3 times their weight per week.
yeah, yeah,
I just shared on YouTube also a nice do-it-yourself for a worm bin.
nice.
You go check that out and figure out how to make one yourself.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty easy to make, and if you don't want to make it, there's also cheap setups that you can buy. It's super easy, and you can store it anywhere. I mean, you can store it like under your sink, or you can store, if you got a little corner in the house. The cool thing about the worms, and the mixture that you're putting into the worm bin is that it's not going to be a smell. There's not going to be like a smell of things decaying in your house. Um, so they kind of control order and they control pests, so you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But basically, the mixture of composting. This is something we should talk about. So we have what we call browns and greens. I was just about to ask that. Ask what about the rodents or about the browns and greens? So we got what we call browns and greens. This is the mixture. So the greens are what we refer to as the nitrogen products. So nitrogen products are going to be like the food scraps. That's going to be the peels, the leftovers, all that kind of stuff is your greens. And the reason it's called greens is because that's kind of like the color the majority of it takes on as it starts going through its decomposition. So your greens, your nitrogen products. That's one end of the mixture. The other end is your browns, and the browns are going to be the other organic matter like paper, cardboard, sawdust, um,
Cornstalk.
cornstarch, leaves. Leaves are a big source of browns, and that's your carbon sources. So the carbon sources mixed with the nitrogen sources are what are going to help accelerate the process. Because if you think about it, in nature, when something like an apple, if an animal eats an apple and it falls on the floor, it automatically is interacting with carbon.
Yeah.
But in our setups, if we are not in nature, if we don't have the luxury of having like a backyard, we have to kind of manipulate it and bring in these kind of earthy products into the mix. Now, there's a bunch of different techniques on like the ratio of how many browns to greens, and we can do a whole episode on just that. I would say, the way to think about it is that there definitely has to be an even amount of browns and greens in your mix, but go heavier on the browns. Go heavier on the browns because they're usually not as solid.
Yeah.
If you think of like paper and stuff like that, it's hard to measure, paper in relation to banana peel. Um, they they usually say like a 20-to-1 ratio or 30-to-1 ratio. That gets too mathematical. Just visually think at least 50-50, but a little heavier on the browns.
The recommendation is 3 to 4 parts browns and 1 part green.
Right. That's one of the
Yeah,
recommendations.
one of
That's
the
what I'm saying. There's,
recommendations.
there's various because there's like the Japanese composting techniques. There's different techniques around the world that have different ratios and say this is like the perfect way to do it. Um, but to simplify it, you have this mix. So if you have your worm bin, for every like every week, say you dump in a new pound of waste in there, make sure you also put that much of the browns in there. And good sources are like to get in your house if you don't have access to like leaves and stuff like that. It's gonna be paper. Make sure it doesn't have ink on it and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Just paper. If you order from the devil a lot, if you order from Amazon, you probably have a lot of cardboard and paper waste. That's a good way to utilize that waste. And the worms are gonna bite on that stuff. It's gonna be really healthy for the worms. Also during coffee grinds,
Yeah, coffee grinds, tea leaves.
yep, the worms love that stuff, and also it heats up the compost, which helps with the decomposition process.
Eggshells too.
Eggshells, yep. What we got going on in the? We got some questions or thoughts?
Nah, I was saying that she was asking people to consider one pet.
Yeah, man.
Kids did it all the time back in the day.
Heck yeah, you gotta have insects. Yo, I had it in junior high school. I went to a dorky ass science school, Salk School of Science in New York City, and one of my classmates, this dorky white kid, he had a hissing water bug from Madagascar. It had horns, bro.
What the
And
fuck?
that was his pet, and he was big as his soul, bro. I'm like, yo, that gotta be some white boy shit because you know we don't fuck with fucking water bugs in the hood.
Nope. I had enough of that in the Caribbean. We don't need any more of that here.
I am not making a water bug my pet. Um, but yeah, he was a cool dude. But that was kind of weird. Yeah, so I think they're like indigenous to Madagascar.
Yeah.
So they're hissing. See, yo, Iris, see if you can find the hissing horned water bug. Put that on our Twitter feed.
Madagascar hissing cockroach.
There it goes. There it goes. Show that picture real quick. Where do we see that thing? Oh my god, we're looking at pictures of water bugs now. You see when you started, Iris? Worms are not water bugs. Just side.
Worms are way better.
Worms are way better. So in any case, so I don't want to spend too much more time on the worm bin. Oh, they ain't got a picture of it. But the worm bin can be really, really a good setup in your crib. There's also when you're composting, there's juices that come, sometimes called the composting tea, juices that come out of the bottom of the worm bin. So if you get like the pre-made worm bin, sometimes they have like a little drainage system. Do not throw that tea out. That tea is really, really good to water your plants with. Has tons of nutrients in it that you can use to help water your plants. Get my little green thumb on, you know what I'm saying? Making like I know what I'm talking about here. So then the next setup that we have are we have two more. Oh, and the other thing that's cool about the worm bin is that it's a year-round composting system.
Nice.
And once the worms are kind of in the flow, it's like nonstop. Every week you can put in another pound, or however many worms you got, however big your setup is, you could put in a new mix every week, and it just kind of just keeps going through this process. If you have a multi-trade system that you set up, you can just put the stuff that's composting quicker on the top, and just kind of flip it like that, and you can really get a cool setup. And what you do with all that compost, that compost then turns into this great brown compost that you then mix into your potting soil, or you can donate to your local community garden so they can use it. That compost has tons and tons of nutrients in it. So things that organic matter that normally would have been waste in a landfill now is creating this super nutrient dense food that's going to then feed plants and feed animals and contribute to our society. So that 3,500 tons of waste that right now is just polluting environments can actually be saving the world. Um, so I'm getting my Captain Planet on right now.
Yeah.
Yo, you used to watch Captain Planet?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Which one were you?
Take a guess.
I don't know. It's okay.
Fire.
I think it was Heart.
I do, baby. There's no picture of this thing. It's just frozen computer.
Oh my god. Yo, he's searching the Madagascar cockroach and it just froze his computer.
Shout out to National Geographic for not bringing any photos up.
Shout out to National Geographic for not having a good web interface.
Yeah, seriously.
They uploaded like super high quality images. All right, so yeah, so the second thing, the two other ones are more outdoor setups. Now, both of them are going to require a little bit of space, but not much. And in places like New York City, where we're a very urban space, you have to find some outdoor space for this. The good thing is that there's tons and tons of community gardens around New York City. The community garden system was a big activist-based initiative back in the 60s and 70s. See if you can find some resources for that, Iris. Um, but it was a big movement to kind of claim land, untouched land, away from uh, um, landlords who are trying to convert every free space into a building, and they're still doing it. There was this big initiative to reclaim the land for the community to have small pockets of green space in the community, and that community garden struggle has never ended. There's this continued battle by community gardens. The thing with community gardens is that a lot of them are just not utilized by the community because they don't have the resources to market to the community. The community doesn't know that they're available. Sometimes they're mismanaged, so they're locked more often than they should be.
There's a couple by me in my area in Washington Heights that are just locked up. We don't know how to get access to them.
Exactly. So you can go to where's the I forget the community garden. There's an organization that basically helps manage community gardens. It might be
Green
through.
Thumb.
It might no. Green Thumb is more of a donor organization. I'll look it up later and I'll share that resource. But you can actually, if a community garden is being neglected or not opened up to the community, you can reach out to your local city council member. You can reach out to your community board, and you can find out what's going on. There you go. And so in any case, so they're community gardens. So they're for the community. They're public spaces. So if you go in and you say, hey, I want to set up a composting setup here, or a composting drop-off site, you're within every liberty to do that. Obviously, you have to be usually the one that's going to take the charge on managing it. It's not as big a task as you would think, though.
Yeah.
So in any case, so the first technique is this device called a tumbler. See if you can find that. There's tons of composting tumblers that you can purchase, big, small. The cool thing about a tumbler is that what helps accelerate the composting process is not only getting the good
Oh,
mix.
I've seen it.
Yeah, you've seen those in gardens.
Yeah.
So not only getting the good mix of carbon and nitrogen, the browns and greens, but then moving them around. Okay, so you want to encourage oxygen getting into the compost. You want to encourage air pockets. You want to be able to have the bugs and the microbes moving around and getting to all parts of the compost. And then you also want to help with the breaking down process, the physical breaking down process. So the tumbler, you throw all the stuff in there. It kind of keeps it contained. It doesn't get smelly. It's you don't have to worry about rats and rodents and all these kind of things because it's elevated off the floor,
Especially in New York
locked
City.
up. Yep, especially in New York City. So you just basically spin it, once a week. So if you had, so let's say you set up a composting setup, and you get a tumbler, right? You might get some city money to help you get a tumbler. You might be able to do a community fundraiser or whatever. Get a donation. A lot of these composting organizations will donate one to you. Um, and so you put in all the collections of compost that you have, right? Maybe you put out a call to the community. Hey, everyone, bring your compost for this week. We're going to be doing compost collection. So you collect it all. You get this great amount of compost in there, and then basically every week you just flip it over, you just spin it around. So if you're thinking about like managing one, it's super easy to manage.
Oh yeah. It's a great workout too.
Yeah, yeah. Some of those things get heavy. If you put a lot of stuff in there and you get one of those big ones, it could get
Looking at
real
the
heavy.
photos that I just shared on the YouTube link, like they look pretty exciting.
Yeah. So some of them you like kind of push. Some of them they have like a crank to spin it around. So there's different designs for sure, but definitely it could be a workout. Yeah, there's some that you flip.
Yeah.
I've seen people make it too, like DIY, just like get a couple bins, string them together. You got to be crafty, but you can just make it yourself. So in any case, so that's another technique, the tumbler that you can look into. And then the third technique that I wanted to talk about, you really have to have a dedicated space. That it doesn't have to be massive, but I'm gonna give you some dimensions. But it's basically a three bin setup. It's a three. Well, that's what we call it, a three bin setup. Um, and so the most typical way is to either do this with metal wiring or, in the case of the one that I manage, a wooden kind of structure, usually cedar wood, right? They say cedar wood, because that's not going to break down because of the rain and stuff like that. So basically, you have these three containers that are a cubic meter. I think is the measurement, which is basically like 3 by 3, 3 feet by 3 feet for us. using the metric system. So like a 3 by 3 square is the size of this bin, and you have three of them. So basically, you can manage the different stages of your compost pile.
Yeah, 1 cubic yard.
1 cubic yard. There you go. There you go. I said a meter. Yard on that.
Okay.
So in any case, so you get the three setups. So there's different ways that people do it. Sometimes they use one bin for their browns collection. They use a second bin for their active compost pile, and then they have another bin that's dedicated to completed compost. So that's the so I manage one in my local community garden in the Lower East Side, and that's the way that we manage ours. So like all the leaves and paper that we collect, we put into one bin. We make sure that that one doesn't get hit by rain. The second one, we have holes in the top because that's our active pile, so we want moisture to get in there. And then the third one is our completed stuff. But another way you could do this is because the compost pile goes through different stages, right? So there's a stage where you just mix the ingredients and it's kind of raw. Then there's a couple weeks later, depending on the technique you're using, there's a couple weeks later where now it's starting to decompose and break up. And then, of course, it gets to the point where it's getting to the point of full decomposition and becoming compost. So you could dedicate the bins to those three phases. That's one way to do it. But basically, the way you work these is you do have to physically manipulate them as well. So what you do is you have your pile, and the reason by the that is the 1 cubic yard is because that height is really ideal for creating a hot pile. Okay, so what happens is that when this compost starts decomposing, it starts becoming a breeding ground and like a heaven for all these insects. So the worms and the other different kind of beetles, all really cool insects. They just start munching away and start help. They're the ones that do the decomposition process,
Yeah.
and then the development of microbes. So there's billions of microbes in these piles. So you can have like on a I think it's like on a teaspoon or tablespoon, there'll be a billion microbes on that teaspoon.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So you think about a 3 by 3 foot thing with billions and billions, maybe trillions of microbes. Now those microbes are helping with the decomposition, breaking it down. Those are like little animals, basically, little insects, and they're helping break things down. So you'll be in the middle of the winter, like right now. We'll get into January and February here in New York, and it'll get down to like 10 degrees. With the wind chill, it'll get below zero, and that's Fahrenheit. And these piles will still be 140 degrees. They will be hot. They steam. So if you walk by one of these compost piles in the winter, if they're really active, they're steaming and smoke is coming off them. That's how hot they are because of all the insects and microbes going to work. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's also a natural safety too.
That's right. So like if you have a community garden and y'all just like having outdoor activities, just sit next to that compost. Sit next to that
Well, that'll
compost.
be good.
But yeah, I mean, it gets so hot in there, like, because what you got to do is you got to go in there with some kind of tool and you got to flip it, like a shovel or a pitchfork.
Yeah, that'll definitely.
So you do that once a week, basically, if you're managing one of your bins. So your compost pile is getting flipped once a week, and your compost pile will start at the 3 foot height, but as it decomposes, it'll get smaller and smaller and smaller, and by the end of it, you'll have like 1 foot of actual compost. Because everything breaks down. So you just have to manipulate it once a week. But with these real hot piles, you can get your compost. You could flip a pile of compost in like 3 weeks. Versus if you just let something decompose and you don't touch it, like you just add in all the ingredients and you don't touch it, that's not going to heat up usually, and that one can take anywhere from like 3 months to a year to decompose. So that's not ideal if you're getting like regular donation of food scraps.
Yeah. But if anything, I'd say the three probably more beneficial. You can get it more efficient.
Exactly, exactly. So, and then if you're thinking, oh, maybe this is something I'd want to do, setting up a composting system, really all it is outside of the upfront work of collecting the compost, right? Which is like you maybe you delegate a week or two every season. So you say, hey, every night for this week, once a season, we're gonna do food scrap collection. And so you just make sure that there's a volunteer there every night after work for like 2 or 3 hours and pick up all these food scraps. And you just get all these different garbage cans or bins, get all these food scraps. And then you create your pile. But then for that whole season, all it is you coming in once a week and flipping it over. And that's it. And by the end of it, you get all this great compost that you can put back into your community garden, or you can give to your community garden volunteers or your community members. Really cool to bring kids into the composting site, have them play with the dirt, have them play with the bugs, kind of get rid of those fears.
That's a big problem we have now. Everyone's like, oh no, bugs, kill them off, especially like in the woods area. So that is like, no, you need that stuff in nature.
Oh,
There's a reason it's there.
all those microbes are super healthy for the kids to interact with. They're not going to get sick. They're going to get super, super strong immune systems interacting with the microbes. So we take our 3-year-old Kaya to the composting site all the time, and she's helping, flip the compost, and she's always playing with the worms and stuff like that, and all that good stuff. You got some comments over there? The worms can get really big, and there's different types of worms at different processes of the decomposition. So the earthworms are actually when you get more like to the full decomposition, that's where you're gonna get earthworms. Yeah, yeah, they can get real big. They're real cool to look at. Um, all these cool colors, like you get real like you get the pink ones and you get like these deep red ones and the brown ones. Super super cool. I've never seen it. That's like an anaconda.
Like on the one.
That's in Ecuador or something. That looks like it's gonna eat that dude. What the heck? I don't know. They don't get that big. Oh, where's that? World's largest earthworm. We're looking at some Google images of like these 6 foot 6 foot treehugger.com, of course.
Australia, of course.
Australia. Oh man, those are big. So in any case, they don't get that big, Iris. They're not scary big, but it is really cool to see it all happen. So in any case, so that's the 3 bin system, and that one, it's a bigger volunteer process. Oh, you're not scared of them? Oh, okay. So what? You just like grossed out by them? Oh, she's pro worm. Oh, that's not how it sounded when I was bringing it up the first time. Um, or Angel was saying that you would kill them. Was that what he said? You couldn't manage them? Maybe they couldn't be managed under your watch. Is that what he was implying? I'm not sure. But in any case, so we think about a big contribution on trying to um, push push. Oh, lazy. It is. Compost is lazy person work. It's super. You don't have to do much, and he'll end up doing all the work. It's not much work. Yo, with the worm bin, you literally just throw in your food scraps every week and add some paper. Ija, that's it. That's all you do.
It's
The worm,
self-maintaining.
yeah, the worms do all the work. So it's super lazy person work. But the drop off sites, I would say, are in my opinion, organizing a drop off site and getting an outdoor community garden composting set up is better because of what it does for the community.
Yeah.
So now you're not just composting your own stuff, but now you're helping your whole community deal with their food waste.
And you're helping build the community and maintain it as well.
Exactly. And it's a cool way to engage new community members into the community gardens or in the open spaces. You can also set up programs with local schools for them to come visit the community garden, for them to look over the composting system. Especially, you reach out to a lot of these earth science teachers, these high school teachers. I think about like the South Bronx, for instance, where Iris lives. And if these community gardens are reaching out to earth science teachers would be super excited.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they were like, "What? Like this is happening in the neighborhood, and I could show kids, in live action, this stuff happening." So that's really empowering for the community because then it's like all the waste that's being dumped in our communities or that we're forced to deal with. Now we can be proactive and start challenging the power structures. And the last thing I want to talk about is like we're talking about composting and recycling and all this kind of stuff, and it sounds kind of individual and how does that really attack the bigger issues? But really, you know, making sure that we're not just victims in the process of environmental waste and climate justice, and that we're actively engaged in the process to try to deal with our waste and deal with the waste that's being brought into our communities, really starts getting people empowered to start thinking about waste. Because like, how many people do you think, Arsenio, like think about what happens when they throw their stuff in the garbage?
In this day and age, very few people. Like, unless you're actually like researching it or looking into it, or even just being aware of what you're doing, you're like, oh yeah, I'm just throw the garbage here and just it'll go out eventually. Like I've seen friends just like toss stuff like even still like litter stuff to the side. It's like that's gonna come back and bite us in the ass eventually. A lot of people still think like, oh, we don't have to worry about it because they don't see it.
Exactly. Like I just put it in the garbage can, and whatever happens after that is not my problem, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a very hands-off way of thinking about the world, but that's how we end up in the position we're in right now.
That's right.
That's why we have global warming getting so bad.
That's right. And so obviously the capitalists and the businesses that are running society, they don't care about the environment. They're gonna just try to pinch. Yeah, they're trying to make money. They're trying to cut corners and all that kind of stuff. But the community members who it really is affecting our communities, we have to worry about this stuff. So in any case, so yeah, so we have uh-huh.
Renee. Hashtag
Renee.
young slim me.
What's up, Renee? Renee's on the IG feed. Bring him in. We're bringing Renee into the IG. So he's loading up. So yeah, so the composting I really see as a great way to empower community, to do some education on food waste. Oh, here we go, here we go, here we go. Yo, where you at? Yo, you in area 32? Yo, you looking like a Men in Black right now.
It's the new movie.
You in the new Men in Black? Bring it over to the mic. Yo, where you at right now? Where you at? Why are you playing hooky on us? Yo, where are you right now? Are you like in a hotel? What are you doing? You in some narco shit?
Oh my god.
Yo, we hanging out? We hanging out tonight? What we doing? Ah, we lost him. We lost him. All right, the feds got him. So we have Renee for a second there, but we lost him. He said it's his last recording.
He'll be back.
His last recording of the year,
Yeah,
maybe.
he always pops up again.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, uh, so back to the final point that I was saying is that, you know, in terms of trying to change the conditions in the neighborhood, empower our youth especially to be engaged in the conversation of climate justice. I mean, like, nothing against those of us who are getting older or those in the 40s, 50s, 60s, baby boomers, but our teenagers, our little kids right now, with the millennials, that generation, which we're kind of millennials, I guess, right? We're like at the end. Um, that generation is really gonna feel the effects of global warming. Like that is gonna be their world. The next 20, 30, 40 years is really gonna be drastically different based off of the accelerated rate that we're destroying the environment right now.
Oh, we're already feeling it now.
Exactly.
It was 40 degrees in Texas. Let that sink in for a second.
And I think it's gonna be like 65 degrees in New York City tomorrow. Yeah. So it's real. I mean, the politicians don't want to talk about it. There's those progressive Democrats that are getting in there that are having that conversation and trying to strike up these deals. But we can't wait for a top-down approach. We really got to have a bottom-up approach when it comes to our environment. So bringing it into the process of education, getting creating these community spaces, encouraging our community gardens to have these composting sites, amongst other things, is a great way to get part of that conversation. And like the whole reason this got sparked, even having this conversation on composting, I'm a lover of composting. I've gone through many trainings on composting. I'm going to be going through my master composting certification in February. So I'm a big compost like advocate. But it was because Iris made a comment like, "Oh, I've been saving this. I think it was like an eggplant or something like that, right, Iris? She's been saving this eggplant because she didn't want to waste it, and she felt bad about wasting it, whatever. Yeah, it was eggplant, but it was like rotting. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't edible, I guess, at some point.
Oh no.
But that's real. Like having that consciousness about what's happening in our environment, not wanting to waste food. If you grew up in very poor circumstances, you know food waste is not something that you do, or you're gonna get smacked across the head.
Oh yeah.
But you know, like you don't have to waste your food. You can bring that food waste, the stuff that you didn't eat, and bring it back into the environment. Nature doesn't have. There's no such thing as food waste in nature. There's no such thing as pollution in nature. So if we're engaging with nature, engaging with that process, we're going to see some great things. Cool. So I think we'll end it at that.
Sounds good to me.
Anyone have any final questions? Iris says, I still kiss the food I throw away.
My grandma used to do all
And
the
she
time with bread.
apologizes. Oh my gosh.
And they, my grandma used to do that with the bread. Like, yeah, man, the loaves that you didn't eat.
You didn't eat them in the loaves?
My grandma
The
did.
bulo
I
is
did.
I love that
I
part.
ate that too. My grandma was like, no, I don't know. Threw it out.
And that's like Cuban bread?
Nah, just like regular loaves.
Oh. I'm like, yo, that's the best part.
Nah,
You know?
Cuban bread, eat the whole fucking thing.
Yeah. The agua pan and stuff. Pan de agua. Um, that's what I do. Iris. But now you don't have to kiss it and feel sad.
You can still
And,
kiss it. You know, it's compost.
now we can start composting. So yeah, so follow some of those all of those resources that we shared on Twitter and on the YouTube feed. A lot of resources on how you can start composting, find drop off sites, start raising awareness around this stuff. If you're a teacher, starting composting bins in your school, all that good stuff, or trying to get your school to join some composting program, all that cool advocacy work. But for sure, stop wasting your food and stop throwing it into landfills.
Big time.
Word. Go watch Aquaman. It comes out tomorrow or tonight.
Tonight.
Comes out tonight. Learn about plastic waste and what the mer people are gonna do to us. If we
Don't throw things in the ocean. Trust me on that one.
Yo, that movie's crazy though.
Good.
It's such a crazy tribute to like the biodiversity of the sea too.
Yeah. A little bit more representation here and there.
Yeah, there wasn't enough people of color, but they had Jason Momoa and he's been doing his
It's a start.
haka dance. What is it called?
The haka.
The haka dance. He's been doing the haka dance everywhere, so he get me hyped. Yo, big up to his daughter though, who was killing it on the haka dance, even
And
though
his
she
son.
was put into the. His son was looking alright. I was
His
looking at
daughter was
it.
killing.
His daughter was killing it, and it's usually a male dominated thing. There's been more females doing it, but she should have been in the front.
She definitely.
I was like, yo, she's better than most of the grown men who were doing it. But in any case, that is what it is. Yeah, but Aquaman, like all the people of color were like bad guys and monsters. And,
One of the main bad guys was African American, and then you have Timon Dijou, who was in like 3 DC movies now, but he's all special effects. And even Moody Lim, Asian American actor, makeup and everything. So it's like,
yeah. So they could have did better on that Hollywood. It got a little Hollywoodish. But big up to Jason Momoa. He killed it in there. And also too, I mean, they made Aquaman a person of color, and they were very kind of clear that he was a person of color and that he
and
had Polynesian
it
descent.
makes sense with the Polynesian gods.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty dope. So yeah, so save the world. Go watch Aquaman. Stop wasting, plastic and stop wasting your food. We'll be back hopefully next week. Hopefully we'll have a show next week. We'll see if we can figure out logistics. Hopefully this is not the last episode of the year. But if we do not speak to you next week, have a great rest of your holidays. Happy New Year. It's been a great 2018. I think we're gonna do. There's been some idea of doing like a recap show. So maybe in the first week of January or second week of January, we'll do a recap of 2018 and go over all the cool stuff that we've done this year. Um, and hopefully I can be part of that conversation. All right, y'all. So we'll check y'all next Thursday, hopefully, if not in 2 weeks. All right, peace.